Today we are going to discuss with Mr. Ross how can all of us
become readers, and how can we encourage our young kids also to be readers, right? And that is the topic of discussion for today. Mr. Ross, a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
To you here at DPS Varanasi, and it was an absolute amazing session today morning that we had with the students. You know, I happened to speak to a few students and they were all gaga over it, and they were like, one of the child really came and told me that, sir, my dream has been fulfilled today. I have Mr. Ross's
They're easily pleased.
autograph. So brief intro about Mr. Ross. Ross Welford is the best-selling author of Time Traveling with a Hamster and What Not to Do If You Turn Invisible, whose imaginative and heartfelt stories have inspired young readers around the world. He is also a former journalist and a TV producer, and then he turned a magical storyteller. Ross brings a unique blend of creativity and curiosity to everything he does. He is also a proud member of the Magic Circle, the world's oldest club for magicians. Ross combines his passion for storytelling with a love for magic to ignite creativity in children. And today we are thrilled to have him share his journey, his insights, and also to inspire all of us on how we can raise readers in our families. So over to the first question, Mr. Ross. You've had an incredible journey, and you come from a small seaside town in England. And you had an incredible journey as an author, as a celebrated children's author. How much of that seaside town do you bring to your stories? How has your upbringing really molded you who you are today?
That's a good question. And first of all, thanks for having me. I've had a lovely time here, and I've been really inspired by what you do and by what the whole school does and by this festival. So thank you very much. In terms of the small seaside town question, I came to writing fairly late in life. At least I came to writing stories fairly late in life. And there was a moment which for me was quite transformative, and it was after I'd written the first draft of my first book, which was Time Traveling with a Hamster. And I knew nothing about writing. I'd read books, but I hadn't done any courses, or I didn't have any advice. I was just writing from the heart, And I reread this draft that I'd written, and the setting for the draft, I can't remember what the town was, what was called, but it was one of those fictional anywhere towns that you get in fiction, and particularly in children's fiction. It was a made-up name that I'd given it, and it was just anywhere. And I thought there was something lacking. And I realized that when I was rereading it, I had actually in my head used the geography of the town where I grew up. So the beach was where the beach really is, and all of that. And I thought, would this work if I just abandoned the fictional element and just admitted that it was really where it was? Mm-hmm. And when I did that, something changed. Something changed in me, something changed in the draft, and suddenly it became real. It became a real place because it was a real place, and it transformed the whole book. And so when it came to my second book, because when you're writing a second book, one is very conscious that you don't want to repeat yourself, And so I thought, right, well, I can't use that trick again. I'll set it again in this fictional nowhere or anywhere. And again, it didn't work. That's when I gave up. And all of my books now are set in and around roughly where I grew up. And it has the benefit that it makes it seem real, and also I don't have to research it. I don't have to go anywhere to research. I just make it up because I know what it's like.
It brought in a lot of authenticity and,
I think so. I don't know. I mean, obviously, most people who read it have no idea where Culvercott is, or Culvercoat as it is, or Whitley Bay, or most people who read it have never even been there. Mm-hmm. But I think it does have a certain sort of realness. I think.
Yeah, beautiful. And interestingly, you actually moved from journalism to being a TV producer. What really made you to get to children's literature?
Oh, money. Yeah, really. I mean, literally. I don't normally say this when I'm talking to an audience of children. They often, one of the questions is so you mustn't tell anyone this. What inspires you? And I'll say, well, what inspired you to become an author? But I think, most of us are adults here, and I can say I needed a job. My career as a TV producer for a few years had been going nowhere really. It had been winding down. I was getting a little bit old because the TV production, or the type that I was doing, is kind of a young man's game. And so I was heading into my 40s, and by that stage it had been winding down, and I realised that I needed to think about something else. I needed to think of another job. Otherwise, I was going to be in trouble. And so during a period of unemployment, which was because, for a complicated reason, we'd moved abroad because my wife got a job abroad. And so I had a lot of time on my hands, and I'm very, very easily bored. So I decided to start writing a book with the hopes that this might become something that I did, and then the stars aligned or whatever, and I was fortunate. So yeah, it was I needed a job.
So it was an accidental,
a happy accident. Happy accident. Yeah.
Brilliant. And it's very interesting. Your stories are filled with a lot of imagination, and like you said, there's a lot of heart into it because you've never done something. You're not really trained as a writer, but you started doing it. With what you really felt. And what do you really think that makes an interesting story or a memorable story for children? Something that they're completely hooked on to.
You're asking the wrong person, actually. I think what you really need to ask, if you really want the answer to that, you need to ask a children's book editor, maybe, or maybe a children's book seller. They know more than I do. All I can do is write what comes into my head. I try not to analyze it too much. I really, really try not to analyze it. I try to write from the heart, as I said before. Looking back over the things that I've written, I think it's probably fairly basic stuff, like an engaging hero or heroine, an unusual situation. Certainly for what I'm writing about, which is sort of science fiction fantasy, an unusual situation they're in. Curious adults make sense. Curious, engaging adults. It's very difficult to write a kid's story in which there are no adults at all. You can do it, you can do it, but usually in most stories, adults come up because, kids can't live unless they're on a desert island somewhere. So yeah, but I try not to, and humour, I guess, but I try not to analyse it too much.
And in this age where there's so much of screens and so much of content available on the screen, we have a lot of parents here. How would you suggest that parents bring out storytelling and use that as a way of really connecting with their children?
I think the thing I would recommend most is reading with children. That was the thing that kind of transformed my family life when I started doing it. I think it's very, very tempting for parents to think that as soon as children can read, which is around about age 6 or 7 or something, maybe a bit younger. Well, that's fine. They're reading. They're on their own. Leave them be. And you can do that up to a point. But I think the warmth and the joy of sitting with the child and reading to the child and pointing to the pictures, and then later on just getting a really, really good book and having story time. It's transformative for children. It really is. And of course, that used to be the way that stories were told. That used to be the way that stories were passed down. I mean, that's the essence of civilization. Really, it's only fairly recently that in human civilization that we've been able to print books, only for a few hundred years, and even more recently still that most children could read. All of those stories used to be passed on by parents to children in an oral tradition, and I think we abandon that at our peril. I think children absolutely love it, and for me that's one of the things that I remember most about when I was growing up, when my kids were growing up. My kids are adults now, and far too old. They're 22, so they're far too old to have story time with Dad. But, I still miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my kids are also, my son is 4 and my daughter is 7. And it was a very conscious decision for me when I had, when we had our first child, that I was not a reader, absolutely a no reader.
Right.
But I think that it was a very conscious decision that I took, that, if I have to ensure that my kids read, I must start reading.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big shift in my life as a person also. And I think I completely resonate with you when you say that having a shared time for reading, having time that, you're doing stories together, sometimes just oral storytelling, otherwise, 2 of you or 3 of you are reading a book and all of you are spending the same time reading maybe different books or reading the same book and discussing.
Oh yeah, and car journeys. Car journeys are a good way of doing it. I mean, it's really tempting just to, put the audio book on.
Yeah.
But no, kids absolutely love. At least mine did. The kids love Dad tell us a story. You just make one up. They don't care that it's rubbish. Yeah. They really don't care. Yeah. And tell us that one again, or tell us more story. My mum was no great reader, no great literary talent or anything, but she used to tell us stories that she just made up about Silly Billy, like a little boy called Billy who was very silly. Silly Billy. Mum, tell us a Silly Billy story. And she would just make up something, some mad thing that this kid did. Absolutely, we loved it. And I think parents too often now think, I'm not good enough, I can't think of something. Kids don't mind. They really don't mind.
And in your stories, there's something that truly comes out is, at the end, it's about doing the right thing. And on the other side, they're also very imaginary. Like very, very creative, something completely. How do you look to maintain that balance, when you're writing?
I think mainly it's again, that's a tricky question there, you got me there. I don't normally plan my stories. I think that's part of it. A lot of authors do. A lot of authors have very complicated plans. Famously, J.K. Rowling planned the whole of Harry Potter, all 7 books, before she started writing. That's just not me. I just couldn't do that. And so I tend to work towards as an ending is, and they all lived happily ever after. That's the ending that I work towards. Nothing more complicated than that. And then I try to work out how the kids get there and how they work that out. And then if it's too easy, I throw a problem at them, and then I'll throw another one. And very, very often, I don't know how I'm going to solve it, And that's one of the most exciting things about writing without a plan, as I do, is I'll just put a cliffhanger in, and then I'll go to bed, or I'll go off and do something. But it'll be ticking over in my mind. It'll be ticking over, and I think, how do I get out of that? How do I get out of that? And if I can't, then I go back and I change it, But usually I'll try and think of a way out of it, and that way we get towards that happy ever after.
Lovely. And I shared in the beginning, you're also a member of the Magic Circle.
I am.
And, it is one of the most coveted magicians group. Right?
Yeah, it is. It's a funny thing, yeah.
Would you like to tell us a little bit more about this prestigious group and how your interest in magic came about?
I couldn't tell you. It's too secret. No, it's not. It's not really secret at all. It's a magical club which was set up about a bit more than 100 years ago by a bunch of professional magicians. And for a long, long time, get this. For a long time, they wouldn't admit women. Okay, they do now since about 1990, so it's a long time they haven't, because apparently women can't keep secrets. I'm sorry, I didn't make up these rules, it's ridiculous. I think about 30 or 40 years ago they realized that this was ridiculous. It's kind of like a social club as well, but you do have to pass an audition. Most magical clubs, anybody can join just if you're interested in it. The Magic Circle, it does make you undergo an audition to join. And that is very nerve-wracking, because you're performing not for a regular audience. You're performing for a bunch of magicians who are all sitting there like, right, entertain me, and there's no hope of fooling them. You're not trying to fool them. You just basically they just want to know that you're not rubbish.
Yeah. And you go across many schools across the world, and something that you do is you really excite kids with some of your magic tricks.
Well, it's a fun thing to be able to do,
And would love to hear from you how, some of the responses from students that have really stood out for you when you've done a magic trick, and how.
You know what the funny thing is normally when I come to the Q&A at the end of a session, it used to be right. Has anybody got any questions? And load your hands up. How did you do the rope trick? How did you do the book trick? How did you do that? And now I have to say, right, I'll answer any question you like, except how I did the tricks. I can't answer those.
So your books, like Time Traveling with a Hamster, inspires readers to think beyond the ordinary. And you come up with these, various ideas, extraordinary ideas. The question that I'm asking is, coming from, I met this gentleman from the world's largest lesson, and it is an initiative by the UN.
Right.
And he shared a very interesting piece of data with me, and he said that, Siddharth, at the age of 3 years old, probably 99% kids are very creative. But when you look at the same data at the age of 35-year-old, probably 2% people remain creative.
It's a real shame, isn't it?
So how should, what can parents really do such that this creativity?
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned that because I was at a school in England only about 2 weeks ago, and I've been thinking about this a lot very recently. Is that I went to the school, and in addition to doing the magic show with all of the books and everything, I also do more intimate writing workshops. And how I do the workshop is I give the kids an opening sentence for a story, and then I'll give them picture clues to continue it in whichever way they choose. You know, and this goes on for about 3 paragraphs, and they all end up. Nearly all of them, they all end up with a chapter of their first book that's completely different. They're all different, and they all get a sense of achievement. Even kids who don't think that they're very good at writing, they all get this sense of achievement at the end of it. And I absolutely love doing it. And children of about 7, 8. Nine are the best at it. 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds are the best at it. 11 and 12, they start to become a little bit more reticent, a little bit more reluctant to do it. And very often, I always say to the teachers who book me to do these things, I say, by the time you get to 13 or 14, it's best if you pick the kids. Hand-pick the kids to come to the workshop, because by that age, a lot of kids have decided, I can't do this. I can't do this. And the reason I'm thinking about this, there was one kid at this thing about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He just had written nothing, and I said, come on, I'm going around. I said, come on, you must be able to get something. Look at that picture. What does that make you think of? And he said, no, I can't. I've got no imagination. Oh, I thought, no. And he was about 12. He was only about 12. And I thought, what an early age to develop this idea about yourself that you've got no imagination. And and invariably, when I talk to the teachers afterwards, I think the kids who are struggling are the kids who don't read. The kids who have never really read at home and don't have any love of books, and they're always on their phones. And that told me this is research conducted by me, so it's not scientific or anything, but it confirms to me what I've suspected, is that reading stories and developing a love of reading is what keeps that imagination alive. And if you don't have that, kids grow up thinking, I've got no imagination, and that's tragic. But it starts early. And it starts early, and the cure for it starts early as well, which is to keep kids reading and to engender a love of books and stories.
And do you think the magic aspect of your tools up your sleeve, does that also help you make your stories more creative, more imaginative? Is there a link between magic and storytelling?
I didn't think there was. Until I'd written my second book, and it was, and with my second book, I got to the end of it, and I finished it, and blah blah blah, and I had a third one to write because the lovely people at HarperCollins liked what I was doing, and they said, we want you to write more. And I thought, oh goodness me, I thought the first 2 were hard, and I thought I looked back at at what I'd written, and I wanted to write roughly in the same genre. And I realized that I'd written a time travel story. Well, that's something that's impossible, you know. I'd written the second one was called What Not to Do If You Turn Invisible. So that's about a kid becoming invisible, and that's impossible. And only then did I realize, I'm writing about impossible things becoming real. That's what a magic trick is. Oh, that's what I'm doing. But it wasn't until I'd written the first two that I realized that basically I was doing magic tricks but with words. And that made it a lot easier after that. I realized, okay, what can I think of that's completely impossible? And I'll write about that. And yet make it real. So the third one was about a kid who was 1,000 years old. And I carried on that road. Now I know what I need to write about. I think of something that can't happen, and then I make it happen.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And you know, some of the audience that we have are parents, and you use a lot of magic in your workshops with students to just connect to them, to, you know, give them like a spark that they want to hear more from you.
Yeah.
How do you suggest parents use magic as a tool?
What? Quick magic trick to teach you?
Yeah.
You want to do a quick magic trick? I don't know if this is going to work. Actually, this is almost certainly not going to work. I'll show you a trick to disclose exactly how I do it. I promise you. You go to any book of teach yourself magic. You know, it's in nearly every kid's book. Okay, if you're that interested, you know, most people are not. Okay, I call it the time travel rope trick, and the idea is that when I count to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll cut the rope into 2 pieces. That's the easy bit. Okay, the time travel happens when I count backwards. I count backwards from 5 down to 1, and we go back in time about 30 seconds. That's all. And I keep it easy. Back in time, 30 seconds to when the rope was in one piece. And it goes like this: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the rope is back in one piece. How about that? How about that? Did you say? He's looking very confused here. You want me to do it again? He's saying, oh, he didn't cut the rope. He didn't cut the rope in the middle. You know, tell you what, we'll do it this time. We'll go back in time to when the rope was in 2 pieces. It's the same thing. Okay, I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now I know you're probably thinking, hang on, I want to learn this. I'm going to learn this. So I shouldn't really be doing this, but I'll do it in slow motion for you. I'll do it in slow motion, and it goes like this: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! And I realise that's imperfect. But to join in now, okay? You can channel your inner 10-year-old, okay? We will all time travel. You will all be a little bit younger. Now you're interested. We'll all be a little bit younger. On my command, I want you all to join in with a countdown from 5 down to 1. You will see the knot drop off the rope. You will see the rope go back into one piece, and you'll all be a little bit younger. Are we ready? Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there we go. Back into one piece. You can check that out. The time travel rope trick. Thank you.
And now we know how you get the students hooked to your sessions.
Yeah.
If at all, as teachers, we would also learn magic.
Yeah, I promise you can learn that. It's very, very easy. And I'll be kicked out of the magic circle if I suddenly told you.
Top 3 things that you would recommend to every parent here and some students here to really start reading. Top 3 things that you would recommend to a parent, that how can they inculcate reading in their kids, and to young students here, that what should they do to start reading?
For students, for kids, I would say the most important thing is read widely. Find something that you like, that's good, but try something else. Give something else a go. Even if it's just trying 1 or 2 or 3 chapters. Give another author a chance. I know you may like a particular series, and people do get locked into reading just the one type of thing. Give other stuff a chance. Give non-fiction a chance. Non-fiction. There's loads of really good, engaging non-fiction as well. So if you're struggling with fiction, try non-fiction. There's some great stories for non-fiction happening in non-fiction. For parents, I would say start early, but also allow children to choose themselves. My parents were really, really good like that. I had 3 older brothers and sisters, and so I was lucky. I grew up in a house full of books because they'd all read them all. My parents didn't care what I read, so long as I was reading. I was in a corner reading. I was quiet. My mum was happy. So she wasn't that bothered about what I read, which is a good thing. And the other thing that I would say, which is, well, it's not controversial. It's just people are not used to hearing it. I would say, go easy on the stories that promise to teach a lesson. A lot of folk tales here and everywhere in the world. A lot of folk tales purport to tell you, this is a story that will teach your children the value of this, that, or the other, and they all have their place. Don't get me wrong, they all have their place. But sometimes what kids want is just a cracking adventure and really funny characters, really lively action. Sometimes that's just what kids want. And kids are smart. They know when they're being told a lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that can be really, really off-putting. So I would say soft pedal the moralizing sometimes, and just let kids be kids and read what they want.
Brilliant. I think, yes, absolutely. Just inculcating reading first, and then maybe the lessons can really come after.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I think we've had a very interesting last half an hour, 40 minutes. Last 2 quick questions from you, and then maybe if the audience has one or 2 questions, we can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Which is your favorite children's book growing up?
Growing up, it was The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton. I absolutely loved that book. It opened up. Looking back, it's only now as an adult I look back and I realise that it was quite a modern book. That hole in the cloud at the top of the faraway tree, now we'd call that a portal. A portal to another land. I mean, Enid Blyton didn't call it that. I don't think the word had been invented back in 1950 or whenever she wrote it. It was a portal story, and I absolutely loved that. So that was my favourite as a kid.
And if you could time travel, where would you time travel to?
I would time travel to the future. The past is the past. There's nothing we can do about it. But my goodness me, I'd like to try time travel to see if all of these things that we're trying now have come true. Can we actually go to Mars? Is that really going to happen? I'd love to find out.
Brilliant. That was lovely. Do we have maybe one question from the audience? If anybody has something and would like, yes, someone there.
So,
Hi.
So how you dive deep into the ocean of words and find the finest pearls of words?
What? You're a poet, my friend. Diving deep into the ocean and finding the finest pearls of words. I take a deep breath and I hold my nose and I go. No, I'm not sure. Normally I paddle. I'm a paddler because when you're writing for children particularly, it's very tempting to, well, any sort of writing, I'd say it's very tempting to do that, to reach for difficult words, reach for that perfect word. Sometimes children don't want to read that, and sometimes the right word is the simplest word. And I would say that a lot of amateur writers make the mistake of trying to make their writing too flowery, and sometimes what you really want is those pearls that you can find on the beach that make it more acceptable, accessible. Does that make sense? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, for sparing your time, coming all the way to the city of Varanasi and spending the day today with all of us at DPS Varanasi. It has been a very enlightening time for all of us, have conversations with you, and I'm sure the last half an hour for everybody in the audience has been very, very interesting, and especially we are eager to know about the rope trick.
Thank you very much. The pleasure's been mine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
A big round of applause for Mr. Ross.